Ladies and gentlemen, this is Miss Humbert here. Today we're going to be doing Unit 5 Notes 2. So we're going to be talking about graphing quadratics. So yesterday you learned about the different parts of a quadratic, and now we're going to actually work on graphing the quadratics themselves. So let's just take a reminder of what we worked on yesterday. So when you're given a quadratic, it's y is equal to negative x squared plus 6x plus 4. So first thing we want to do is assign our a, our b, and our c values. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So my a is going to be negative 1. There's no number with the x squared term, so that means it's a 1 and it's negative. And then my b is a 6 and my c is a 4. I know that this is going to be opening down because my a is negative, so it has to open down. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to calculate out my vertex. So I get x is equal to opposite of b over 2 times my a. So then we get 2 times my a, 6 divided by negative 2. Oops, this should be a negative 6. There we go, opposite of b. Divided by negative 2. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 is positive 3. So the x-coordinate of our vertex is positive 3. Now we want to get the y-coordinate. So to get the y-coordinate, I'm going to plug in 3. So that negative is going to be on the outside of my parenthesis because the negative itself comes from the original problem. So I have negative 3x, or 3 squared, plus 6 times 3 plus 4. And when you plug that into your calculator, go ahead and check it, and you should get 13. So then my vertex is 3, 13. I'm going to go ahead and write that out better. 3, 13. Your y-intercept comes from your c value, so your y-intercept is 4. Your axis of symmetry comes from the x-coordinate of your vertex. So my axis of symmetry is that x is equal to 3. Now, let's go ahead and let's take a look at how we graph quadratics. First thing you want to do is to find the vertex. We learned how to do that yesterday. Opposite of b over 2a, plug that in, get your y, and then you have a point, xy. Okay? So that's what we talked about. So those are your points. We did this yesterday, but you still want you to write it down. So you're going to find the x-coordinate, plug it into the original function so you can get the y-coordinate, then you're going to write it as an ordered pair. Next, taking a look at the next one. Okay, so step 2 is going to be that we're going to make a table. Okay, so now we're going to make a table. So to make a table, you're going to start with the vertex, then you're going to find the other values. So I usually go 2 values to the left and 2 values to the right of whatever the x-coordinate is. So one way I'm going up and one way I'm going down. Now we're going to create that table for problem number 2. So let's go ahead and let's do that. So for problem number 2, let's create our table. So we need to first calculate out our vertex. So I'm going to do x is equal to opposite of b over 2a. So then I get negative 6 divided by negative 6, so I get 1. So my x-coordinate is 1, and I'm going to put that in the middle of my table. So then once I found that, I want to get my y. So then I'm going to plug in 1 wherever I see an x. So then I have negative 3 times 1 squared plus 6 times 1 plus 4. Okay? So then you can go ahead and plug that in to your calculator. And when you do that, you end up getting 7. Okay, so now we need to fill out the rest of our table. So I'm going to have x get larger going this way and x get smaller going this way. Now here's the thing with a table. Okay, when you're graphing a parabola, remember that this x-coordinate is our axis of symmetry. So that means that these 2 values have to be the same and these 2 values have to be the same. That has to be true in order for it to be symmetrical. So I'm going to save myself some time and only plug in one of the 2. So now I'm going to plug in each of those x values into my original function. So instead of doing 1, now I'm going to do 2. So I'm going to put a 2 in there. And I'm going to type that into my calculator. So negative 3 times 2 squared plus 6 times 2 plus 4. Plug that in your calculator. Make sure you're getting the same answers I am. And I got 4. So then 0 has to be 4 as well. You don't believe me? Plug in 0. Make sure I'm right. Next, we're going to go ahead and we're going to plug in 3. So now we want to plug in 3 for this value. Or you could plug in negative 1. Either way, you only need to plug in one of the 2. So then we're going to plug in our values. Let me get a better color here. So then I'm going to plug in 3. So now in my calculator, I'm doing 3 squared plus 6 times 3 plus 4. And when you do that in your calculator, you end up getting -5. So now let's flip back to the other page and let's take a look at step 3. So now we're going to take a look at step 3. So step 3 is that you're going to graph the function. So basically, you're just going to graph all the points you created on the charts. Okay, so step B and C will be uncovered right now. Okay, we're just going to do it right now. You could also remember that you can draw the axis of symmetry. That's what we did, and we mirrored those pairs to the other side of the parabola. Okay, so we basically just took and said, okay, these two values have to be equal. These two values have to be equal. Okay, so let's take a look at problem 2. Let's go ahead and let's graph what we've drawn now. So we're going over 1 and up 7. And I'm going to plot that point. So over 1, up 7, and I'm plotting that point. Then I'm going over 0, up 4, and plotting that point. And also I'm going over 2, up 4. Now recall that through your axis of through your vertex is the axis of symmetry. So I always draw a horizontal line there, or vertical line there, that's dashed. Now we have one more. We're going to go -1, -5, and then 3, -5. So if you draw your parabola correctly, that axis of symmetry that goes through the vertex should be cutting your parabola in half. So hopefully you're better at connecting the dots than I am, because that was not very good. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at example 3. So now we're going to do the same kind of thing. So just remember that your graph should open up when A is greater than 0, and it should open down when A is less than 0. I believe that information is on the front side of this page. We're kind of jumping around today. All right, so let's take a look at number 3. So for number 3, we want to go ahead and find our vertex. So X is equal to opposite of B over 2 times A. So then I get -2 over 2, and that gives me -1. So X is equal to -1. So that's going to go in the center of my chart. So I'm going to go up going this way and go down going this way. And now I just need to plug in a bunch of those numbers into my calculator. So we're going to do Y is equal to, now I'm going to put that, make sure you put that negative in parentheses when you square it so that it squares correctly, because remember, a negative number squared should always be positive. So go ahead and type that into your calculator. Pause the video if you need to. When you do that, you should get 0. So here's what I want you to do. Pause the video, go ahead and calculate out the rest of this chart. When you're done, replay it and make sure you got the chart done correctly. So this should be 1 and this should be 4. So now we're ready to go ahead and graph this. So I'm going to start and I'm going to graph the vertex. So when I graph the vertex, we're going -1, so we're going left 1, up 0. So there's my vertex, and through my vertex is that axis of symmetry right there. Then we're going over 0, up 1, and plotting that point, and then we're going over 2 and up 1 and plotting that point. Then I'm going over 1 and up 4 and plotting that point, left 3 and up 4 and plotting that point. So then I have a beautiful parabola right there. Again, if you graphed it correctly, your axis of symmetry should be cutting it evenly down the middle. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 4. So for number 4, we're going to use the same kind of ideas. This time we just don't have a chart there. That's fine. We can make one. So first thing I want to do is calculate out my vertex. So I get X is equal to the opposite of my B. So since B is a -2, it's going to be a +2 over 2 times A. So 2 over 2 is going to be equal to 1. So my vertex of my x coordinate is going to be 1. So let me go ahead and let me post my x and my y. So 1 is going to be in the center. We're going to be going down, going this way, and going up, going this way. Okay, so now we're going to take and plug in each of those x values into our quadratic. So then we end up getting y is equal to, then we're going to plug in our 1, so then we have 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 8. So then you can go ahead and you can plug that in your calculator. I'm sorry, it should be -1. No, +1. So then we're going to go ahead and we're going to plug in +1 into our calculator. So I'm going to go ahead and have you guys finish this chart out on your own. Okay, and so once you do that, go ahead and graph number 4 for me. Here's what your chart should have looked like once you've done that. So now let's plot those points. So we're going to go over 1 and down 9. So that's actually going to be off our graph a little bit. So I'm just going to plot that point there. And then we have our vertex. We have that axis of symmetry going through it. Then we're going to plot points on either side. So then I notice that I'm going over to 0, and now I'm going up 8, and over to 1, and I'm going down 8, sorry. And then I'm going over 3 and down 5, which is this point. And then I'm going over 1 and down 5, which is that point. So this right here represents your parabola. Okay, again, your axis of symmetry should be cutting it down the middle. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at this one. So for this one, I only have an a value. Everything else is 0. So then when I go to calculate out my vertex, it's going to be opposite of 0, which is really just 0 over 2 times negative 3. Well, 0 divided by negative 6 is just going to be 0. So the x-coordinate of my vertex is just going to be 0. So let's go ahead and let's make our chart. So I have x and I have y, 0's in the middle. I'm going to go up going this way, and I'm going to go down going this way. So now we're just going to plug in each of those values for x. So I'm going to take, and I have negative 3 times, and now I'm going to just put those values in. Well, that first one's going to be 0. Then I'm going to take that out, and now I'm going to put 1 in. So when I put 1 in, come on. When I put 1 in, then I end up getting negative 3 times 1 squared, so I get negative 3, and here I get negative 12 and negative 12. Remember, these two always have to be the same, and these two always have to be the same. Otherwise, it won't work. So let's go ahead and let's graph that. So then what we're going to do is we are going to go, our vertex is at the origin, and then we have our axis of symmetry going through our vertex. Then we're going left 1, down 3, right 1, down 3. Then right 2, down 12 is going to be off our graph, so I'm just going to write those, or draw those in there, and that's your parabola opening up downward. So you will be watching part 2 of this in class tomorrow, so why don't you guys go ahead and make sure you bring some headphones to class so we can do those word problems as a video in class. Thanks for listening.